Let's dive right into this forgotten corner of rock history, where the air was thick with the smoke of amplifiers pushed to their limits, and the dreams of musicians who didn't give a damn about fitting into the pop mold. Picture London in the late 1960s, a city still buzzing from the psychedelic haze of the summer of love, but starting to crave something meatier, more ambitious. Rock that didn't just groove, but unfolded like a novel, with twists, turns, and enough instrumental fireworks to make your head spin. That's where GNIDROLOG slips in, a band so under the radar that even die-hard prog fans sometimes scratch their heads when you mention them. But here's the raw truth. They were brilliant, overlooked because they refused to dumb down their sound for radio play or chase the charts like so many others. If you're dipping your toes into progressive rock for the first time, GNIDROLOG is your gateway drug. Complex without being pretentious, raw without being sloppy, and packed with that gritty British edge that makes you feel like you're eavesdropping on a late-night jam session in a dingy pub basement. Formed in 1969 by twin brothers Colin and Stuart Goldring, GNIDROLOG wasn't born out of some grand plan to revolutionize music. It was more like a natural eruption from the underground scene. The brothers had been messing around with guitars and recorders since their teens, drawing from the folk traditions of their English roots, mixed with the bluesy swagger that was infiltrating every corner of London. Colin handled vocals and rhythm guitar, his voice a sharp, emotive blade that cut through the mix like Peter Hamill on a bad day, raw, urgent, and unapologetically flawed in a way that perfect pop singers could never touch. Stuart, on lead guitar, was the quiet firecracker, laying down lines that twisted and turned like a river avoiding straight paths. They pulled in Nigel Pegram on drums and percussion, a guy who'd cut his teeth in earlier bands like Spice, bringing a jazz-inflected precision that kept their rhythms from ever feeling predictable. And then there was Peter Mars Cowling on bass and cello, the anchor who added those deep, rumbling undertones that gave their music a symphonic weight without needing an orchestra. The name itself, GNIDROLOG, an anagram of Goldring with an extra O thrown in for good measure. It was playful, irreverent, a middle finger to the seriousness of the prog scene that was starting to take itself too seriously, with bands like Yes and Genesis building cathedrals of sound. These guys weren't trying to be gods, they were craftsmen, piecing together songs that blended folk's intimacy, jazz's improvisation, and rock's raw power. Their origins trace back to the fertile ground of London's club circuit, where the air was alive with experimentation. The late 60s had seen the Beatles shatter boundaries with Sgt. Pepper, and The Who smash stages with operatic fury. But prog was emerging as the bastard child of all that, taking classical structures, odd time signatures, and conceptual lyrics to create something that demanded your full attention. GNIDROLOG fit right in, but they stood apart by leaning into a darker, more introspective vibe, influenced by the social upheavals of the era. Vietnam protests, economic strife, and a youth culture questioning everything. By 1971, they'd caught the eye of RCA Victor, a label willing to gamble on oddballs in the prog boom. Their debut, In Spite of Harry's Toenail, dropped in 1972, and if you haven't spun it yet, do yourself a favor. It's a quirky beast that kicks off with Long Live Man Dead, a track that swings from acoustic delicacy to full-throated rock assault. The album's title alone tells you they're not playing it safe. It's a nod to some absurd inside joke, but the music inside is anything but frivolous. Tracks like Time and Space weave flutes and recorders into a tapestry that's part medieval folk, part spacey exploration, evoking the cosmic wanderings of early Pink Floyd, but with a tighter, more aggressive edge. Colin's lyrics here delve into existential musings, life, death, the vastness of the universe, without preaching. It's the kind of stuff that hits you in the gut if you're nursing a beer alone at midnight, wondering about your place in the world. What made GNIDROLOG tick wasn't just their chops. It was the synergy, the way they locked in like a family band should. The twins' telepathic interplay on guitars created harmonies that felt organic, not forced, while Pegram's percussion added exotic flavors with oboe and flute accents that nodded to world music influences creeping into rock. Cowling's bass lines weren't just supportive. They were melodic adventures, often dueling with the guitars in ways that recalled the intricate bass work of Chris Squire, but with a earthier, less polished grit. This debut captured the essence of early 70s prog, a rejection of 3-minute singles in favor of sprawling suites that shifted moods like weather in the English countryside. But commercially, it bombed. The market was flooded. King Crimson had just unleashed islands. Emerson, Lake and Palmer were hammering keyboards like mad scientists, and GNIDROLOG got lost in the shuffle. Tough break, but that's rock for you. The best stuff often simmers underground, while the flashy acts grab the spotlight. Undeterred, they doubled down with Lady Lake later that same year, and this is where they hit their stride. Bringing in John Earl on saxophones and flute for added depth, the album feels like a maturation, shedding some of the debut's whimsy for a more cohesive, intense sound. Open with I Could Never Be a Soldier, an 11-minute epic that starts with gentle acoustic strumming and builds to a furious anti-war rant. Collins' vocals soar and snarl, painting pictures of senseless violence with lines that sting. No flowery metaphors, just blunt reality about the horror of conflict. It's motivational in its honesty. If you've ever felt powerless against the world's madness, this track grabs you by the collar and says, "Wake up, do something." The instrumentation here is a masterclass in dynamics. Flutes flutter like birds escaping a storm. Saxophones wail in protest, and the rhythm section thunders like artillery in the distance. Follow that with Ship, a shorter but no less potent piece where folk elements shine through. Acoustic guitars chug along with a seafaring rhythm, evoking tales of pilgrimage and escape. Lyrics about journeying across waters that could be literal or metaphorical, touching on themes of freedom and loss that resonated in a post-hippie era where ideals were crashing against reality. Earl's windwork adds a jazz undertone, making the track feel alive, breathing, like it's improvising its way through uncertainty. Then comes A Dog with No Collar, a brief acoustic interlude that's pure respite, gentle, introspective, with Collins' voice softening to a whisper, musing on loyalty and independence. It's the kind of song that reminds you prog wasn't all bombast. It could be tender, human. The title track, Lady Lake, is the crown jewel, a 7-minute whirlwind inspired loosely by Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, but twisted into a prog nightmare. It opens with haunting recorder melodies, builds through guitar riffs that crunch like breaking ice, and explodes into sax-driven chaos. The narrative weaves fantasy with social commentary, beauty corrupted, innocence lost, in a way that's emotionally raw. If you're new to this, imagine Van der Graaf Generator's Darkness meets Jethro Tull's Flute Frenzy, but with GNIDROLOG's unique stamp. No keyboards, just organic instruments pushing boundaries. Same Dreams follows, a folk-tinged ballad with Cat Stevens vibes, where harmonies between the brothers create a warm, inviting glow amid the album's intensity. It's a breather, a moment to reflect on shared human aspirations in a divided world. Closing out with Social Embarrassment, they lean into jazz rock territory, Earl's baritone sax growling alongside Cowling's cello in a dialogue that's as intricate as a chess match. Stewart's guitar solo here is a standout, fiery, unrestrained, the kind of playing that makes you air guitar in your living room. Lyrically, it's a jab at societal norms, the awkwardness of fitting in, delivered with irony that bites. The whole album clocks in under 40 minutes, but it packs more ideas than many double LPs from the era. Recorded at Morgan Studios, the production captures their live energy, raw edges intact, no over-polishing to make it radio-friendly. That's the realism. In 1972, prog was peaking, but GNIDROLOG's refusal to compromise meant they played to half-empty halls, while others sold out arenas. Their live shows were legendary in small circles, sharing the bill at festivals like the Great Western Express in 1972, with acts such as Atomic Rooster, Don McLean, Humble Pie, Jackson Heights, Jade Warrior, and Joe Cocker. Imagine the energy, sweat-drenched musicians pouring everything into performances that blurred lines between rock concert and theatrical ritual. But success eluded them. By 1973, frustration set in. RCA dropped support, tours dried up, and the band dissolved. Colin and Stewart pivoted to punk with the Pork Dukes, a hilarious shift that showed their versatility, prog's complexity giving way to three-chord rebellion. Pegram joined Steel Eye Span, bringing his multi-instrumental flair to folk rock. Cowling hooked up with Pat Travers for bluesy hard rock fame. Earl faded into session work. It's a stark reminder, talent doesn't always pay the bills. Yet GNIDROLOG's legacy endures in the shadows. Their sound influenced later acts. Echoes in neo-prog bands like IQ, or the experimental edges of Porcupine Tree. Critics today hail Lady Lake as a lost masterpiece, its reissues on CD revealing pristine sound that vinyl hunters once killed for. In the canon of prog, they're not the kings like Genesis, but the rebels, the ones who proved you could blend folk, jazz and rock without synthesizers or capes. For you, the curious listener without a PhD in music theory, start here. Crank up in spite of Harry's toenail on a rainy afternoon. Let it wash over you. Feel the odd meters without counting them. Absorb the lyrics' bite without analyzing. It's music that invites you in, challenges you to think, but never leaves you cold. What makes them emotionally impactful? In an age of disposable tunes, GNIDROLOG reminds us rock can be art, messy, profound, life-affirming. Their anti-war pleas in I Could Never Be a Soldier hit harder now than in '72, with conflicts raging worldwide. Their explorations of identity and society in social embarrassment mirror our own awkward navigations through life. And that raw, unfiltered sound, it's a call to action. Don't settle for mediocrity. Grab your headphones, hunt down their albums on streaming or vinyl, and join the cult. You'll emerge changed, motivated to dig deeper into prog's treasures, realizing the best music often hides from the masses. Expanding on their influences, think about the cultural soup of the time. The Goldrings grew up in a post-war Britain where folk revivalists like Fairport Convention were resurrecting ancient ballads, while jazz clubs pulsed with Coltrane's fire. Prog absorbed it all, but GNIDROLOG filtered it through a lens of personal expression. Collins' lyrics, often poetic yet direct, tackled themes like pacifism without the flower power naivety, realistic about human flaws, urging listeners to confront them. In Ship, the pilgrimage motif isn't escapist fantasy. It's about enduring hardship, a metaphor for the band's own struggles. Technically, their use of wind instruments set them apart. Without keyboards, they relied on flutes, oboes and saxes for melodic complexity, creating orchestral textures on a rock budget. Pegram's oboe in quieter moments adds a haunting quality, like a voice from another era. Earl's sax on Lady Lake brings a jazz urgency, his solos twisting like smoke rings interacting with Stewart's guitar in ways that feel conversational, alive. This interplay, musicians listening to each other, responding in real time, is prog's heart, and GNIDROLOG nailed it. Historically, they emerged as prog diversified. Early 70s, Britain saw the genre split. Symphonic giants like Yes with their polished epics, Canterbury eccentrics like Caravan with jazzy whimsy, and dark brooders like Van der Graaf. GNIDROLOG bridged them. Symphonic ambition, Canterbury experimentation, VGGG intensity, but with folk roots grounding it. They toured sparingly, focusing on creation over commerce, a choice that doomed them commercially, but preserved their integrity. In interviews, scarce as they are, Collins spoke of music as therapy, a way to process the era's chaos, Vietnam drafts, economic slumps, cultural shifts. For Legos like you, here's why it matters. Prog isn't elitist, it's expansive. GNIDROLOG shows how rock can evolve without losing soul. Listen to Lady Lake and feel the build-up, the tension release. It's cathartic, like yelling into the void and hearing an echo back. Their brevity, albums under 40 minutes makes them accessible, no hour-long suites to intimidate. And emotionally, they tap into universal feelings, frustration, wonder, defiance. In a world of algorithm playlists, discovering GNIDROLOG feels like finding buried treasure, motivating you to explore more. Maybe Gentle Giant next, or Comus for weirder vibes. Their disbandment in '73 was abrupt, but not surprising. The prog bubble was bursting, punk loomed, promising simplicity over complexity. The Goldrings' shift to Pork Dukes was pragmatic. Punk paid, prog didn't. But traces lingered. Pegram's folk ventures with Steel Eye Span carried GNIDROLOG's multi-instrumentalism. Cowling's work with Travers showed his bass versatility. A reunion in 1999 led to the release of their third album, Gnosis, in 2000, which featured a mix of unreleased 70s material and new compositions. It proved their fire hadn't dimmed. Today, in 2025, with vinyl revivals and streaming archives, GNIDROLOG is ripe for rediscovery. Fans on forums rave about their authenticity, how Lady Lake outshines many hyped albums. It's direct, If you want music that challenges without alienating, they're it. No bullshit grandeur, just honest craft. So turn it up, let it sink in, and feel that rush. Prog's power to transport, inspire, and remind you life's too short for boring tunes. Delving deeper into the debut, Peter is a quirky character study, with cello adding melancholy. Snails crawls with odd rhythms, showcasing their humor. Prog could be fun, not just serious. Who Spoke questions authority with biting lyrics, Collins' delivery dripping sarcasm. The album's flow is non-linear, mirroring life's messiness.